Good morning. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Tomboy Official. I am drinking lukewarm coffee because it's either I didn't make it hot enough or it's really that cold. So I don't really know if this brewed properly. I don't really taste too much coffee. I taste mostly cacao. That might be good enough for today though. But it's Monday. Hopefully everybody is having a good morning so far. Got some rest and relaxation if you got to have a 3-day weekend for Veterans Weekend. I'm honestly going to be happy to be back to being busy, or more forced to be busy on Tuesday with work. I had planned this past weekend to go snowboarding in the mountains, and because they weren't really announcing it too quickly, I was like, I'd rather just hang out with my friend on Saturday and get some workouts in and study, because I was like, well, I need to know, and they didn't announce till late that they were going to be open Saturday. And so they were open Saturday, Sunday. They're not open during the week this week, weekdays, and then they'll be open, I think, from next weekend on. They'll have some weekdays that they're open as well. There's only 2 trails open at the moment, and according to the video footage, it looked cool. I just, holiday weekends and traffic, and I was like, maybe I do just need to lay low, because, my energy's been a little, not bad, just kind of feeling like I just need to stay in town, especially coming up with the upcoming holidays and everything. So that's kind of how I'm starting off this morning, is some kind of weak coffee. Wasn't really able to order my breakfast delivery because one place said they're not taking orders, and then the other place, there's some error message I keep getting on my Uber Eats app. So I'll try back in a little bit. I just decided to put up a recording in the meantime, just about, different, I don't even know what this topic is called, but, I was kind of thinking, about music. Like last night I was, rocking out to some music, some old stuff, like old for me anyways, Slipknot, Stained, Chevelle, Mudvayne. I don't know what else on my list. I could go through my Spotify, but definitely like the used, like a lot of just kind of heavier rock music, and some new metal, and I was pretty, that's kind of my era. I think a lot of people know, I grew up playing guitar, and that's definitely something that when I moved to San Diego, like I mentioned this before, when I was dating this lady, I mentioned to her, just, sometimes you say things to people that you don't really think mean much, maybe, or you're just like being open about something, and then you just realize there's probably more depth to it. And I made a comment like, yeah, ever since I moved to San Diego from LA, I just hadn't been like painting or drawing anymore, and she was just, I don't remember exactly what she said, but something to the tune of, maybe there's a reason for that, and I was just kind of like, yeah, like, I didn't really want to go too much deeper into it, but I kind of knew. I was like, something happened between then and now, like now as in like that time period when I was talking. And I have kind of noticed that, it's kind of like when it comes to artistic and creative things, like I know that I tend to put a lot of my energy into it. I like pretty much when it comes to music that I grew up listening to, like a lot of it was heavy. A lot of it I really gravitated towards. Like I wasn't only listening to rock, I listened to pretty much everything, but I was playing guitar, and I kind of like, a lot of people have like, they might fangirl over certain musicians, or like the teeny boppers with their, I don't remember what it was back in my day, like Jonathan Taylor Thomas and like Hanson and NSYNC and all that. Like, I wasn't not into those groups. I just wasn't into them, obviously, for the same reasons that other girls were into it. I was just like, why do they care about these little boys, like these young looking guys? And there's something kind of like interesting that, this isn't really completely what I was thinking. I'll go back to kind of like the music and creativity positive aspect that I was talking about, but as I'm drinking this cacao coffee, I don't even know what it is. I feel like this is basically coffee flavored cacao. Like, I see the bit of the coffee grounds along the outside, but I don't really feel it mixed in. But that's okay. But yeah, there's something I've kind of noticed. When it comes to maybe androgyny, even like when you think of, I mean, I know this isn't the same thing, but like costumes and kind of like that kind of, kind of how maybe musicians like David Bowie or like a lot of like rock artists, kind of play around with their appearance. Almost more so, I'd say almost more so than a lot of types of musicians. I see it more in rock. I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, like, but I do notice this glorification, I don't know if you want to call it glorification, or respect for like a certain kind of look, a certain kind of appearance, dress style in music, like I was a big fan of the band AFI, still am. They didn't really dress, I mean, there was a bit of androgyny in there, kind of this like almost like a rockabilly / goth kind of style to them, like the platform boots and the long, Davey used to have long hair, and they kind of had this look to them that was very like polished, like a polished goth kind of look to them. I always like Cold Chamber. I always like Migs on the guitar. He's always been one of my favorite guitarists. And, way back, in the 90s, he used to kind of wear, like, not like full makeup, but sometimes, you'd see him, had like these fishnet shirts and kind of that, goth style pants, like kind of the ones that you almost see ravers in like Germany wearing and stuff, like the hard style dancers, but just maybe not the flared out kind of jeans, but with the buckles and the chains and the sometimes like the studded belts and just all the kind of things that kind of signify like a certain style. The haircuts, they're very unique. But definitely there's like makeup, haircut, stuff like that, kind of involved. You see with a lot of groups, and it's very interesting because you don't really see, like, yeah, I'm not saying like Justin Bieber and NSYNC and stuff don't wear makeup. Like, they're very polished looking. They make them look like kind of like pretty boy looking, but they're not wearing like makeup in places that's like, it's not normally makeup that looks like that. The way that some of these like metal and new metal artists kind of would like dress was very, I don't know, I always found an appeal to it because it was kind of like this music that was always just like aggressive lyrics that were very captivating. Like, sometimes there's definitely a lot of screaming and like loud noise in the music, and something about that would catch my attention. It's just like you could tell there's a lot of emotion behind when it was written. It's a very moving kind of music. Like, it makes you feel a certain way, whether it's like repulsed, like turn it off, or like I want to yeah, like I resonate with this feeling right now. I mean, people have asked me before, do I like metal because I'm angry? I would say no, that's not it. But I mean, I would say, like, for example, last night I definitely noticed that I was tense, maybe at the least, a little tense, a little like maybe I had some low blood sugar, because I remember feeling a little on the irritable end, like socially irritable. Like, when I'm by myself, I'm fine, but then when I notice I'm gonna have to interact with people, I'm like, like, I don't want to, So I was like getting food because it was like dinner time after I studied and worked out, and I was like, yeah, I just don't want to talk to anybody, for no reason. Like, that's just kind of how I feel a lot lately. Just like, I don't want to talk to anybody in person. I'm kind of like in my head about some stuff, not in a negative way. It's just I don't like to be disrupted from my thoughts. It's really something weird, and I think anyone who kind of has like a creative, maybe artistic sense, maybe it's like a normal process to go through. Just the feeling of like, I'm like in my headspace about some kind of like deep topic, and I don't want anybody else disrupting my, thought processes. I'll kind of feel like that a lot. And, I think it's fine. I feel like so long as I'm not like lashing out at people and being like a jerk, I feel like I can feel however I feel. That's fine. But what I do with how I feel, that's different. So I just notice, it's harder to be gentle and kind and like happy with people when I'm kind of feeling like that. And it's not that bad. Like, I feel like my family kind of gets me on that level. Like, they're kind of like, all right, like, so nobody's really like, I just worry about it because I'm like, I don't want to be like a jerk to people. So I do kind of sometimes when I'm like that, I'm like, all right, let me just get the food that I'm getting and then like get out of here, So I got dinner and, was just kind of gonna eat some food. And yeah, like maybe it was the blood sugar levels, like maybe, because I have like a pre-workout and then it's like I was working out and studying and stuff. And so that's probably more so what it was. I don't think I was really in a bad mood. I think it was just, coming down from C4, it's a pretty intense pre-workout. And it does get me a little like pumped up, like a little bit, But I also mentioned before, yesterday I had like so much CBD and THC. Like I definitely was like, a little more on the sluggish side, if you will. Like I wasn't like getting like an energy pump. I kind of did, but not too much. But yeah, like after I ate dinner, I was like just kind of gravitating more towards listening to music. And then, I was just like rocking out on some of the old riffs and stuff. And like I've always got my guitar and stuff, and I was just like, man, like I didn't realize some of these songs were so fast, like those Papa Roach songs off the Infest album. I used to know quite a few songs on that album, and like Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I used to know a few of these songs, and like like I don't remember them being so fast. Like they just feel so fast, because I'm kind of getting back into it and everything. And it feels good to get back into music, back into like art and like creativity. It's just, I notice for me, like it's definitely like an emotional release type of a thing. Like I don't know if I've explained it on here. I don't remember what I post where at a certain point, but yeah, I like to listen, I like to write, like lyrically I like to write, poetically I like to write, just journal wise I like to write. That's something that I find very helpful, just for like getting things off my chest and just kind of putting it somewhere. And I do kind of notice, like if I do want to pick some songs to kind of if I do want to pick some music to kind of some music to kind of play or whatever, or something to write about, I do kind of consider like who's listening, who's not listening. Like, am I going to post this? Is it something I'm not going to post? Is it for me? Is it something I'm going to use later in something I'm writing, or is it something I'll use lyrically? But a lot of the ways that I talk about like how I feel about stuff and like where I struggle about certain things, I do try to write it down. So I've got like this like archive of just like different types of things that maybe are a struggle or that don't really go too good for me, stuff that I'm like working on, and I just kind of write it and leave it. I don't, the whole purpose is just to just have something productive out of the whole experience. It's like, well, if I'm going to be feeling this way, if I'm going to be feeling stressed or anxious or sad or just like frustrated about something or angry or whatever, irritated, I'd rather just try and just write it down, and just leave it, like, so usually after that kind of process, and then like just to kind of like, rocking out to some riffs or some music or whatever, I usually feel quite a bit better. I felt a lot better after eating dinner and listening to music, and this was after I'd worked out. But I do think that, the caffeine crashes do play a role in my mood. I mean, it's kind of interesting, like almost everybody I talk to, they're kind of like, yeah, you're like, you're a pretty sensitive person. And I don't know if they say that because they don't expect that from me. Like, maybe they're surprised, or because I'm definitely sensitive to like caffeine and stimulants or alcohol or THC or whatever. Like, all of it, I pretty much have a low tolerance for like everything. And I mean, that's fine. I'm not like mad at that. But I do have a pretty low tolerance for things. But like, I would agree. I'm a pretty sensitive person. And a lot of times, I feel like the amount of I gotta turn off this heater. I got the sun coming directly into my room, and alright. Yeah, guys, this heater's not gonna cut it for me. Sometimes it gets like way too hot. Like when the sun's coming in, it's way too hot, and I've got the window open too. But yeah, I'm definitely like a really sensitive person, but it's, not like, I don't see it as a bad thing. It's just, sometimes I have to like work with myself about it. So, one thing I do notice that I kind of do, that I'm getting better with is, not getting into these like thought traps, if you will. Like, I don't know what to call them, but it's like, my mind goes to these like places, these like automatic places that I don't really want it to be in. And it's not so much about trying to control it or trying to stop it. It's more so, trying to work with it. A lot of times I don't find it helpful. And I've mentioned, in the mornings, that's kind of a common time when it comes up. So I just started, getting up, podcasting. Like, I'm not going to spend my mornings like lounging around thinking about that kind of stuff first thing in the morning. I mean, it's not, I'm not even going to mention what it is. It's not really that. It's just memories of stuff. It's not really that, like, it's just kind of become like a normal part of my life. But, not that, I don't know, maybe it was long ago, maybe like it started happening more during the pandemic, honestly. And some other, actually it was before that, honestly, it was way before that, but, I was living at a place before where, somebody would come in around like 6 a.m. and start like working on this loud machinery. And so because they were working on that machinery, it was like my thoughts weren't really like fully like, I wasn't like gonna go back to sleep, and I wasn't really thinking about that kind of stuff. So I started just listening to podcasts and stuff because I was like, well, I gotta drown this out somehow. But I've noticed, it's stuff that I'll come back to and I'll work through it anyways. And so to spend my morning thinking about it really doesn't really do anything productive for me. It's like, there's no, it's just bad timing. So what I've been doing is like, if I'm gonna work through this stuff, I'll do it later on, either writing or something creative with it, or I'll just turn it into podcast topics and like topics that, me and my friends, kind of, we talk a lot about all kinds of different stuff, and sometimes I'll bring them into the mix about like certain topics. And Um, I think it's fine. I'm pretty like I've gone through different stages with all of this. So I think, I'm fine now, but it's just a matter of, you know, sticking to the game plan of what I want to do with it. I but I'm like definitely going through, you know, a period of, you know, I don't want to say reinventing, kind of like revisiting a lot of the things that I found like growing up that I really gravitated towards. And definitely music was that thing, one of those things. Music and writing for sure. But I mean, I never really stopped writing. I more so stopped with the drawing and painting, and playing guitar. Those are things that I kind of just didn't stop doing. But I definitely wasn't consistent with it. Like, I wasn't daily playing guitar. While I was in San Diego, so when I first moved there, I lived with a roommate. I did play guitar, because he was like a lawyer, or going into law. He was in law school, and so he would have a certain time period where he'd be out of the house almost every evening for classes and stuff. And so I'd have a little more privacy. Like, it's a 2-bedroom apartment, and our bedrooms were right next to each other. And so I would play, he would play, I would play. He said that he would like leave his door open when he heard me playing because he liked my playing. I was mostly like playing acoustic, Metallica ballads, and I think at that time maybe I was still coming up to LA on Friday nights once a month to do this Vespers thing. I can't recall if I think I was still doing it for like maybe the first year. I can't remember though. And then, I started singing some. Like, that roommate was gone for like a while, for like 3 months or something. So I remember I had this other temporary roommate move in, and she was almost never home. So I remember I used to play and sing. That's kind of more when I started singing, because, I never really had like space to sing, and I'm not like too thrilled about my voice. But I started singing and playing and recording a little bit. I had a mic that I kept in LA. I don't know how that mic got broken, but it's broken. But I used to have this whole rig. I used to have this whole setup. Like, I don't even want to explain that right now, but I've got this Behringer amp and this RG series Ibanez. I had a mic stand, and a microphone. I still have the mic stand. I just don't have a mic that works right now. And I have an amp with 2 channels, but there's a piece of a cable stuck in one of the jacks, and so it is like stuck inside of the amp input, and so I just leave it. I don't really care. But yeah, there's that. And then so, and I've got this keyboard. It's like from the 90s. It takes cartridges, but it's got like pre-settings and all this kind of stuff. I've got it battery operated. I need to take out those batteries because they're probably old and probably leaking by now. And so I don't want the corrosion and all that, because this is a really old instrument. I don't really want to have to buy another one. But the new ones are pretty fancy and cool, but it's got MIDI, so I just leave it as it is. I'm like, whatever. But I used to have a whole setup. Just now, the hard part is that I can't. I use Reason Studios, and I can't get Wi-Fi good enough from the room with all my instruments, and so it's really hard to record in my room. And I like to have like a space, like my room's like my little sanctuary area, you know. It's like mostly it's just where I sleep and do a lot of creative stuff, and I work on stuff in my room. And you know, there's the rest of the house too, but it's like, you know, I don't really like to be distracted by other people. I like to just focus on what I'm doing. And yeah, so it's really been a helpful thing. You know, I would recommend to people, you know, get back into music if you ever were in it. Get back into art if you were ever in it. I have a friend that took up like coloring and just like paint by number and just drawing. You know, it doesn't have to be good, but just like people trying it, sketching and stuff. And it was funny, not funny, but like, I guess they took this up during the Rona, and I remember mentioning, you know, to my friend, I was like, yeah, like I used to draw and paint all the time. And I remember I used to sketch during class. It probably wasn't the best idea, but I don't know, man. It was just something I like to do. I found it very calming. Sometimes I'd be stressed in class and I'd just be like, I have to be here anyways, physically. So mentally, maybe I didn't really want to be there. I kind of needed to be somewhere else. And I mean, I know like I might sound like super undisciplined, but if you think about the amount of school I went through, and everything that was kind of going on, it's like I was in school, past grad school, attempting a doctorate for 3 years of that doctoral program that I didn't complete, so I don't have a doctorate. But if you think of the amount of school that is, it's like I was in school for a really long time, till like my late 20s. And, you know, there were certain points where it's just like, you know, this just isn't, it wasn't necessarily not what I wanted to do, but I don't know. There were some aspects where I was just like, this is a little, there was a lot going on that I wasn't really able to fully figure out because I wasn't able to sit still and like just reflect on it all. But basically, when it comes to you know, different types of music and stuff, I really did find something about the different looks of some of these musicians, with the kind of costumes, the makeup, the clothing. Definitely for me, the androgyny definitely stuck out for me. Sometimes lyrically, just like how the lyrics were pretty, they had like a lot of emotional depth to them. Like I don't know what I picked up on when I was younger, but it's kind of interesting when I go back and I listen to songs, like lyrics that maybe I never really knew the lyrics, but you know, I look at them now and I'm like, wow, like some of this stuff was really heavy, some really dark, really heavy stuff, but real. I mean, you know, and you know, a lot of times, you know, if you're a sensitive person, you pick up on that kind of stuff, you know, even when you're not maybe like fully like consciously like actively listening to the lyrics. Like I know a lot of people listen to lyrics a lot, which is fine, you know, but I don't know why I've never really. It's not that I ignore the lyrics or that I don't like them or whatever. It's just, a lot of times I notice when I hear music, I listen to the instruments, I listen to the beat, the rhythm. I'm very like beat and rhythm oriented. Not so melody oriented. But for me, it's more like beats, rhythm, that sticks out first. If there's like cool riffs in there, but sometimes riffs are almost like it's like a melodic form of like rhythm almost. If that makes sense. Like, depending on like how much it repeats and stuff. But say, for example, if you think about rock music, some of it where it has that like crunchy like dun 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 sound, it's like it's very rhythmic. But then it's also, there can be like a melody to it as well, because it's like different chords, different notes. But yeah, but I do kind of pay attention to that kind of thing more, like that kind of rhythm and beat. And melody is always going to be there, like it's always going to stick, but it's like if I'm writing, usually I'm writing to like a certain rhythm and a beat. I'm not usually writing melody. Like, it's hard for me to write melody, and when I do, it almost sounds like kind of like if you've listened to like Deftones, just kind of this melody that's a little Deftones. And then I'd say Thursday has some songs like this too, where it's kind of like a little I don't know the word for it. It just, I really don't know the word for it. But if you think of the way that the singer of Deftones kind of sings, there's like, if you were to take his singing and just hear it without the music at all, just the solo, you might not really get the melody. Like if somebody, you know how they say like hum that tune? Usually people hum the melody of the singing. That type of melody of singing, if you were to hum it, I don't think anybody could easily guess what it is. So that's kind of more so how I would say that I write melodically, is like the melodies, whatever it is in my head, it doesn't matter what the rest of the music is really doing. Just the melody's gonna go how it's gonna go. And so, I mean, I don't want to put too much extra time into like writing a lot of music and stuff. But I do find playing music, being involved with music, listening to music, rocking out alongside of the music, playing along, and all that kind of thing. Like it's, I find it very healing. I just do find it challenging, to, sometimes it can be a little, not like scary necessarily, but sometimes it, I notice that I kind of avoid creative things, when I'm in, like, depending what kind of headspace I'm in. And I'm not always in a negative headspace, but depending what kind of headspace I'm in, I do find myself kind of avoiding creative things, even though they do help me, even though they are important to me. Sometimes I'll just avoid it because it's like a lot. Sometimes it's like there's this kind of like it feels easier to keep things bottled up than it does to kind of let them go. Um, Sometimes thinking about that process of letting them go is like, that's going to be intense. That's going to be a lot. Like, it's almost like, okay, this is going to be the worst example ever, but if you've ever seen The Sopranos, I've talked about this before, where Tony Soprano is saying in one of his therapy sessions, he's like, sometimes coming in here is like taking a shit, and then the therapist is like, I like to think of it more like childbirth, and he's like, no, it's like taking a shit, it's like, but it's kind of like, it's almost like that, like sometimes, I mean, I don't know, this is kind of TMI going some weird direction, but kind of how it is, where it's like sometimes you'll have to go to the bathroom, and there's a certain intensity of like when where it's like, I have to go to the bathroom, like there's no way around this now. It's coming out one way or another. And then there's other times where it's like, like it's just a minor annoyance that like I need to go, but it's like I'd rather not go right away because of whatever reason. So how people are making that decision to like go or not go, that's kind of how I almost that's kind of almost how it is if I'm like writing music or something along those lines, artistic wise, is like sometimes I'll be like, all right, like I can hold on to this, like I don't need to do this right now, and then sometimes it's like, this is just coming out, like there's nothing that I can do about this. But I'd rather have the energy come out in a creative way than come out in a shitty way, if that makes sense. It's like, you can kind of spin something into gold, into diamonds or whatever, or it's really gonna literally be like shit, it's like, that's kind of how I see it. I feel like anytime it's put into some kind of creative expression, and especially if it's not like exploiting others or like exposing others, I don't feel like there's anything terrible about that, if you're not like exposing others or exploiting, like, so for example, I can be in a stressful mood, having some kind of memory about something that I just don't want to be thinking about, pick up my guitar, start like writing on a riff on my guitar. I can do that, I can get some riffs together, get some playing down, some playing time, and kind of release that energy that way. Or I can go and be in like a social space with people that I know and be a little bit like in an irritated mood and be a little, rude towards people. That's what I would consider like the shitty expression, is like the way I treat other people, even the way I treat myself. That's the shitty expression versus the gold or diamond expression of like, let's put this into something creative. Like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with anger or anything like that. It's just, if there's going to be other people and how you treat yourself, like how you treat yourself and others is going to be very important. And if it's, sometimes it's too hard. People feel like they can't control themselves. I've lived around people like that they just aren't really in control of how they are. And, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the person who's like always in a funk, always in a mood. Like, I mean, I'm not that person, but I think it could get to that. I could see how a person can get there if they're just not careful. And so, yeah, it's definitely something to consider. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know what these things have in common. I mean, I think sometimes, with the look of some of these bands, just sometimes the way they look, at least back then, like now a lot of them are like old in their 50s. But the way they used to look back then, when they were like in their 20s and 30s and stuff, they were young looking, and they kind of had like different you know expression, with the costumes, with the makeup, with all that kind of stuff. I know some of it's for show, but it's like I feel like they also wouldn't really maybe like do it if they weren't like into it. Like I think they kind of had an appreciation for it as well. Like some of the makeup was maybe like scarier looking. Like if you look at Mudvayne and Slipknot, you look at those people and you're like, okay, that is like a weird way to look. But then if you look at like, yeah, like, maybe at certain times, like John Five of Marilyn Manson, or, yeah, like I mentioned, Meigs of Coal Chamber, Davey of AFI, Jade of AFI, just some of the ways they used to look way back, like in the early 2000s. It was just an interesting way that, it kind of it really captured my attention for sure. And yeah, I think I was usually just kind of interested in being involved with the music and everything. There are definitely groups that don't look like that, but as far as other genres of music, there aren't really a lot of other genres where people look that certain kind of way. And I feel like it was, I never really knew exactly why they would do it, but I always kind of wondered about it, because I was like, there's kind of these kind of like undertones of like some kind of not really like gender identity, or even maybe even expression, but just kind of like this playing around, like this openness to kind of play around with like different ways of looking. That was something that I thought was really cool, because it's hard to do. I mean, it's hard to even change your haircut. Like it's it can be a hard thing to do, and to think that like how they look different, like maybe on every album or on every photo shoot and all that kind of stuff. It's like they kind of would have this look to them. It was almost like a costume or like a persona that they would go into when they would go on stage, or when they would do photo shoots or interviews or whatever it was. Like you can see them kind of looking like a different kind of way. Like even in their free time, sometimes you would see them with like eyeliner and stuff like that. Like that wasn't uncommon. And so, I always found it really interesting. And there wasn't anything like I never saw anything wrong with the clothing. Like I know, I was raised in a church that like they would see just like on the surface, look at the way some of the groups would look, and they would automatically go to like demons and all this other kind of stuff, and just be like, there's demons, like it's satanic because they wear makeup, or they wear black and makeup and like have painted nails. Like I don't know, like there was stuff that was just like to them was like not okay. And something about that, I kind of resonated with that. Like I never really fully felt like, oh, people look at me and judge me like right away. Like like I mentioned, like I don't really have like a lot of enemies, bullies, nothing like that. Like I feel like I've been lucky with all that kind of stuff, but because I know I'm like way different than a lot of people. Like I'm not the typical female. I've never dressed like one. I've never looked like one. I've never acted like one of them. But there was something about that kind of like how people look at these certain musicians just at face value and see them, and it's like, what do you even think, when you see somebody dressed up with like chains and makeup and all these kind of weird ripped clothing and stuff, and this is kind of how they look with their hair all over the place with all these different colors and green and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, somebody could see a person look like that and automatically start judging, saying that they're Satan worshipers, or have no morals, and they must be mean and rude and bad and want to kill people and all. It's like, nah, I don't really think a clothing style is really going to tell you that much about a person, just because of someone's way of expressing themselves with their clothing. But you kind of know like what kind of music they're likely into or connected to. Like you're not going to see that and think that they're like a pop boy band, or you're not going to see that and assume they're like an R&B gospel artist. You're going to see them and be like, yeah, they rock, like it's like a different kind of look that you don't usually see in other types of music. But I think for a lot of people it does also, maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but I think, rock music, heavy rock music, new metal, kind of gets like a bad name for people who don't understand it, right? Because like I said, the music right away makes you want to either come closer or just like push away. For some people it's too intense and they're like, no, get this away from me. And it's kind of funny, the amount that I don't engage with like horror movies, even a lot of violence, and like even Game of Thrones, guys. I can't even get through Game of Thrones. Like that's too intense for me. But then when it comes to like metal, I can just eat it up. Like I'm just, that's kind of more my thing, is just like metal, not necessarily, I wouldn't say not goth stuff, but not goth for goth's sake. I like the style of it. I like industrial music, like that kind of dark industrial sound, like Assemblage 23, and like kind of how like Ministry used to be, and like some groups like that. But I think I remember in the movie AI, Ministry performed Just One Fix. There was some part where they're like at the fair or something. It's not really like a fair, but it was like some kind of circus type thing. Ministry was on the stage performing there, and that was really cool. But yeah, I mean that's about all I really had to say for this morning. It's Monday morning. We're already like halfway through November, guys. I don't even know what to say about that. We just started, then we had this long weekend, and now all of a sudden, we're mid-month. So tomorrow's going to be officially mid-month. So I hope everybody's enjoying this year. It's already going to be over soon. But yeah, I mean, I'd say, it's a good time to start early. I know people sometimes do New Year's resolutions and all that. Like, I feel like for me, September or so is usually the transitional time for me, because I start thinking about training for snowboarding, and then, that's a transitional period for me. And then once the first time it starts raining and all that, it's like, okay, the beach days are now over, and it's time to sit indoors more and do more indoor hobbies and stuff, because the weather sucks. Like, almost any time if I have to wear a sweater somewhere, I'm probably not going to want to be leaving the house. Like, it's just I don't know, it's a Southern California. Like, we're spoiled out here, guys. And, with the, we're not spoiled with the cost of living, but we're spoiled with the weather. So, yeah, but I hope this episode finds everybody well, and maybe you can incorporate some of the things, if you're struggling with some stuff. Like I mentioned, I feel like I can't fully separate, like, if I'm trying to talk about something positive, I can't fully separate, like, that they're sometimes I'm going through things, or other times I'm going through them while working through them. That's kind of what's going on lately. It's like I'm definitely noticing the struggle that I'm in with a lot of the self-care and things I need to be doing, but I'm still actually, like, doing, the workouts. I'm still, like, yesterday I said I was going to go to the gym. I didn't end up at the gym, but I did do over an hour of, like, yoga and stretching, and then I did some, over an hour of yoga and stretching, and I did, like, some, strength training, just mostly, I mostly was working, like, core, calves, arms, kind of upper body a little bit. It wasn't a whole lot, just a little bit. I just did 3 sets of everything, and just kept it at that. I think the core sets I only did 2. That's fine. But yeah, I feel like, I don't know how people feel about the bands I'm into. Check them out if you're into them. I'm gonna be at this Sick New World Fest in May of 2023. I'm pretty pumped, even though it's over 6 months away, but at the same time, it's like this year's flying so fast. It's gonna be May of 2023 in no time at this rate. Like, I'm still trying to get started at the snowboard season, and I'm already thinking about summer. So but yeah, like, in the meantime, it is definitely good to kind of see where you're at with stuff, especially before all these holidays start kicking off. It might be a different year for a lot of people, with the economy as it is, with work as it is, with everything as it is. Like, it's just a crazy year right now. Coming out of the Rona years and jumping into just this disaster. I know, honestly, I'll say this, I'm not saying it in a bragging way, because I do feel for people who maybe aren't able to be in a good space right now, but I'm grateful that I have opportunities and options, and definitely happy to at least have the ability to focus on what I need for my health, what I need for career changes, that I can kind of slow things down and think things through. I know what it's like, too, to be on that other end of the spectrum with that grind and that hustle where you don't even have time to think. You're just trying to eat on time and sleep on time and wake up on time, and I've been there too, and I don't envy it. I know it's hard, but you can do it. It's good to have a plan, though, otherwise that might drag on longer than it needs to, and it's easy to burn out. But yeah, you can definitely get where you're trying to go. Just, I'm learning more and more, take it easy, take a step back often, every day if you can, take a couple steps back, morning, noon, and night if it has to be that, and just take some time to think, how this last few hours go. Am I on point with everything? Just even doing that can work wonders, even taking 30 seconds to just think. But get into some music for sure. Some music, some art. And I'm about to time out. So with that, thanks for listening.